Hello ladies and gentlemen, and the last time we left off, we were talking about hydrology in the water cycle, and I left you with this question, basically how do or why do puddles form? If we take a look at all these diagrams right here, all these pictures, you can see here with this one, nice little puddle formed in the middle of a roadway, or where this person's got their hand, you can see that this water is just sitting on top. Similar here, it's just that this water is moving. Still, it's up on top. This is our surface water. Same here, just flux. Different surfaces, but it's still surface water. These puddles right here are going to be considered runoff. It's water that is not absorbed into the ground. So what conditions exist or have to exist so that that water does not infiltrate into the ground? Here are some of the causes of runoff. If the ground is frozen, it won't allow water to go into the ground or infiltrate in. If the soil is already saturated, if it's filled with as much water as possible, then no more water can go in. If the amount of rainfall that comes in is higher than what can go into the ground, or the rate at which it can go into the ground, we'll see also runoff. We may also have runoff depending on how steep the slope of the land, or how steep it is. And if there is an area with no vegetation or little vegetation, these can be conditions that may cause runoff. Here we can take a look at the steep slope right here of this area moving down like this. So because of the steep slope, we would have water come down, hit, and it would be able to move very quickly over that surface. So we would see an increase in runoff on the steep slope versus here, we could have potentially more water infiltrating into the ground. Here's an area where it has actually a number of conditions existing and that form the runoff, but you can see here that the runoff can basically be a cause of flooding. Flooded roads, same thing. If we don't have water infiltrating into the ground, it has to go somewhere. So it collects into our surface water, our streams and rivers, where they can gain velocity or their discharge can go up and cause lots of weathering and erosion, and in this case, roadways being taken down. You could also see flooded areas where cars go in and they're abandoned and they no longer can make it through because of the increased amounts of runoff. Flooded homes. Now this diagram is interesting. Pavement, because it replaces the vegetation there and it does not allow for water to infiltrate, will increase our runoff. We've seen it at the school before, at the entranceway to the parking lots, where there's always a good amount of water, or even the parking lots themselves on those really rainy days or after a nice snow melt have water all over them due to inadequate drainage. So the water can't infiltrate in through or go through the pavement, so it sits up on top. Some things that we see in areas where there's an increased amount of vegetation is that there's very little runoff. And actually some landscape designs introduce a lot more vegetation to take care of the amount of water or to increase the rates of infiltration that we see in the area. So where we have these trees, they open up pore spaces in the ground and allow the roots of the trees allow for the infiltration to occur. And then the vegetation itself is also absorbing some of the water. So our rain comes down, flows over, and then once it gets into these areas, will infiltrate in. Heavy precipitation, which may cause more runoff, could also trigger landslides. Like we see in these areas right here, loosens up that soil a little bit or that surface and allows for material to fall down. So if you're driving up on the thruway, some areas there, you can see this. You'll see netting that holds back the surfaces. Roads themselves, if you were to look, are not perfectly flat. They have what's called a crown. So when water comes and hits, it'll actually run off towards the sides of the roads. If they were perfectly flat, you would see bigger puddles forming on the roadways themselves and cars would hydroplane. We're going to stop here before we go on to the next screencast, but I'll leave you with this question. Basically, what is infiltration? I've been throwing the term around quite a bit, and we're going to talk a little bit more about it in the next screencast. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.